the farmers always they should have the beneficial effect from the feed ingredients in terms of the price and at the same time the nutrient value with affordable cost also. Hence, in view of this thing, we will see what are all the things to be taken care when a proper ration is formed. So characteristic of a very good ration are like this. Number one, it should be have highly digestible ingredients, especially in terms of the energy, nutrients, and many more things. And the ration should be very well balanced in terms of the protein or the carbohydrate and also the fat, with inclusion of the non-proteinous nitrogen and also the minerals, essential amino acids, and also the vitamins. So the ration must be palatable, or else the cattle will never accept that particular ration, which is made from different feed ingredients. So variety of the feeds included in the ration, varieties of the feeds. Then the ration should contain enough mineral matter. The ration should be fairly laxative, and the ration should be fairly bulky to satisfy the hunger. Then the ration should be include green fodder, and it is economical in labor cost. So usually the feed should be laxative, means the animal should not suffer from the constipation, and it should be properly digested, and it should contain the fair bulky satisfy the hunger, because the empty stomach animal cannot give a good milk yield. And the ration should include the green fodder always, and we say that the total milk ration. So it should be, finally it should be very economical and labor uh, cost also. So that is another thing which we need to concentrate on much more. The cost of the feed ingredients, if it is very high, then it is very difficult. Then ration formulation depends on the nutrient requirement of the animal. Number one, suppose it depends upon the production in terms of the milk, meat, etc. For example, if it's a dairy cow, then we have to give it the body maintenance and also the ration for the production. And if it's a pregnant animal, then for the calf growth also we need to give the additional ration. And dry matter intake capacity of the animal is also depends on how we need to have the feed formulation, availability and chemical composition of the ingredients. And many times the locally available ingredients, if you purchase it, then cost of production of the feed will be less. Then also the local feed need to be properly utilized. Maybe the conventional or unconventional feed, whatever it may be. So that's also another one of the aim of the rations. Then apart from this one, the dry matter requirement of different animal is given here. Dry matter in the percent means the zebu cattle. For example, our local cattle, maybe the Gir, Sahiwal, Sindhi, etc., including some local cattle also. So 2 to 2% dry matter is required to an animal, whereas the exotic cattle do also is require more. That is 2.5 to 3% of the total ration. Then buffalo, it is more, 2.5 to 3, because buffalo is one of the animal which can convert the dry matter into the very good meal. Whereas the sheep also it is 3 to 3.5%, goat it's also 3 to 4%. So what we can say is usually the dry matter requirement ranges from 2 to 4 in different type of the ruminant animals and also the cattle, sheep, goat, etc. So steps formulation of a feed. What are all the steps are there? How to formulate a feed? So the number one, calculate the probable dry matter intake, total dry matter intake, maybe in the percent or in the kg, etc. then calculate the nutrient requirements of the animal, then determine the amounts of available ingredients that must be fed to fulfill the animal's nutrient requirements. So always it is better to prefer our own local ingredients, starting from maize, groundnut cake, then the paddy, then husk, etc. Then the rice bran, de-oiled rice bran, wheat bran, and the mineral mixtures, salt, etc. If they are available locally with the cheaper price, it is always better to make them available to the cattle as the balanced formulation. So these are all the pertaining to dry matter given by the person to the dairy cattle. So total dry matter is divided into two-third. It should be roughage. Means major part should be roughage, whereas the minor part is minor part should be of uh, that is concentrates. Then coming to the roughage, once again two-third of the roughage or three-fourth, that's also okay, no problem. So two-fourth is also leguminous fodder, it's always preferable. Leguminous fodders. Whereas the non-leguminous fodders are one-third green roughage should be there. Always dry matter, dry roughage, leguminous fodder. Whereas the one-third should be made up of the green roughage. If green fodder is legume, it may be restricted to one-fourth of total roughage. So whenever it's possible, like the leguminous crop, like the lucerne, then groundnut, etc., then it should be of one third. Two third is dry matter, or two third is roughage, whereas one third is concentration. Because the price of the concentrate is very high, then we need to balance it with that of the roughage. Because roughage is always very much required for the ruminant digestion to get the cellulose, then also to convert it to the volatile fatty acids by the bacterial fermentation process. See, so this is the nutrient requirement on the basis of metabolic body size. So we can say that metabolic body size is gram per kg weight dot 75. So for example, the maintenance ration. If we divide the ration, there are two types. One is the maintenance and another one is the production. So the dry matter which is required to the cattle, it is 62 grams per kg. Then goat, it is 76, whereas it is 60, especially in case of the sheep. So if you go for the this DCP or the crude protein, then digestible crude protein, then it should be of 2.8 gram per kg of the animal's body size, whereas it is more in case of the goat, and sheep almost it's equal 3 or 2.97. Then coming to the total digestible nutrients, it is 34, whereas in case of goat it's 30, whereas in case of sheep, it is 27.3. So the metabolizable energy is 122, then goat 108, and also the sheep it is 98.0 grams per kg body weight. Whereas coming to the uh, ma- milk production or production ration, once again the fat percent is where fat is mentioned in case of percent, it is 3. Then DCP or in different animals, once again as the cattle, sheep, goat, and pig, the per kg, this is for per kg production of, suppose a cow is producing about 1 liter of the milk, then 3% of the ration should be of fat, whereas the uh, digestible crude protein in grams, it should be 40. So here it is for 1 kg of milk production. So how much DCP? Then it should be 40 grams. Whereas the metabolizable energy megacalories 0.97. Whereas the TDN 0.2270, 2.5 calcium, and also the phosphorus. So this should be always balanced in most of the feed ingredient. So then if the fat percent is 4, then once again it changes to the different entities. For example, 1.45, 1.3, 0.315, 2.7, 2.0. So once again, as the fat percent increases, then the DCP, ME, etc., the requirement increases subsequently. And also the calcium phosphorus requirement increases because the calcium and phosphorus are the one which are drained in the milk, because milk is a very good source of the nutrient to any human being. Hence, it should be made. Then, apart from this one, the concentrate and roughage ratio. How it should be concentrate and roughage. Always the cattle are fed with some concentrates, and also sometimes they need to be provided with the these roughages also. It is compulsory. So, for example, for maintenance of the animal, the ratio of concentrate and roughage is equal to 40 to 60%. 40 or 60. If it is 40 kg concentrate, then 60 kg should be roughage ratio. For growers and average lactators, it should be 50 and 50. Suppose there is a heifer with the age of 1.5 to 2 years, then it is also having the good growth. Then the concentrate and roughage ratio should be 50-50. For heavy lactators like the crossbred calves of the HF breed, then it should be of 60 to 40. So it's opposite to that of the maintenance ratio. So here it is reversed. Then the formulation of concentrate mixture is some information requires. The formulation of the concentrate mixture. Number one, the nutrients requirement of various categories of livestock. We need to know what are all the nutrient requirement to the ruminants and non-ruminants. In ruminants, cattle, sheep, goat, pig, etc. And in case of non-ruminants, the pig, poultry, and the rabbit, etc., which are usually depending upon the species. Then nutrient requirements of various, especially ingredients. What are all the contents of different ingredients which we are going to mix in a compound feed? So that is the availability of feed ingredients. So sometimes there will be a severe scarcity of the maize, and sometimes the GNC may not be available, or sometimes the wheat bran or rice bran may not be available. So in such situation, what are all the alternatives available for us to prepare the balanced feed ingredients? And apart from this one, cost of the feed ingredients is also the topmost matter for other than anything. Always we expect that the feed should be very well balanced. At the same time, it should be low cost, because the animal husbandry depend upon 60% of the ration, and especially the production cost is very high. And bioavailability of the nutrient from feed ingredients, because sometimes the feed ingredients do contain different vitamins, minerals, and many more things which are essential to the animal. But the bioavailability, or the thing that is absorbed into the circulation of the blood, may be less. Whereas the non-nutrient characteristic of the food is also another thing. And apart from this one, a few more points like the chemical composition of the feed ingredients should be known. What are all the chemical ingredients? For example, we all know by this time, because this is the about 15th class. Hence, we know what are all the energy sources of the feed or maize is number one and topmost. Whereas the wheat bran is another thing. Then DORP is uh, one of the alternative source also, whereas the maize is the top one. Whereas the protein source, the plant proteins, for example, they are the groundnut cake or many other type of the cakes like the cottonseed cakes or MOC or also the SOC, soybean cake. And animal sources, for example, the number one is the fish meal and also the meat meal. The fish meal is most cheapest, whereas it can be used in case of poultry, etc. Then mineral sources are the one limestone to provide the calcium and also the oyster shells. Crushed oyster shells are used as the mineral sources. Then vitamins, example, dicerol, E-care, say, and many more products are available in the market, whereas these vitamins are supplemented in terms of B1, B6, B12, vitamin A, D, E3, etc. So all these things need to be added to a balanced ration. Especially only two parts need to be taken care. One is the energy and the other one is the protein. Whereas the third thing is the mineral sources, and apart from this one, the additional thing that is added is the salt, which is always making the feed more palatable to the animal, and also at the same time it should provide the sodium and chloride. And apart from this one, we also have the non-proteinous nitrogens like the urea to the extent of 2% in the balanced rations. So methods of concentrate mixtures, how to prepare. Then there are a lot of methods. So please note down some of the important methods. Number one is Pearson square method. It is one of the well established old type of the square this method, whereas the algebraic equation is by using computer lost cost feed formulation, linear programming, and by trial and error method. It's also another thing. Then apart from this one, what is a Pearson square method is when only two feed ingredients are available. For example, one is source of the energy. Suppose another one is the source of the these proteins. For example, it is GNC here. So the Pearson square is looking like this. Then made the crude protein is up to the 10%, whereas the protein is crude protein is about it is 40%, and the ratio required is crude protein 20%. So we need to add the maize. To which extent we can add is 20 into 30. 20 the maize and 10 to 30 are the protein ratios. So if you take the diagonal thing, especially in case of the Pearson square, so maize is 10, then the protein source is ranging from the 20. So the maize, then also the other ingredients, protein ingredients, sometimes it is 10 to 30. So when two or more feeds are involved, then this becomes still more calculative. And when a fixed percentage of one more component of the ration is also there, then least cost ration is another thing. Least cost ration is a balanced ration using a combination of the ingredients with the lowest possible total cost. So here what we are looking for is to reduce the cost of the feed as less as possible by altering the different ingredients. So this works very well in case of the drought season, etc., where we do not get any source of the feed. Then linear programming is another one. The technique employed to calculate the least cost and profits maximizing the ration, and it's called as the linear programming method. Then here you can see the important feeds or fodder. The number one is the maize. And as we have already informed everyone, once again this is a revision, the DCP or crude protein is 1.17, whereas the total digestible nutrients it is 16.9%. So the maize fodder and the Sudan grass it is 0.39, very less, whereas the TDN is high. Or no, when compared to maize it is less. Basra it is 1.08, then TDN is 14.8%. Oats it is 2.63, then it is 16.7%. Coffee 3.05, then 11.3%. Whereas the losers, the digestible crude protein is 3.24. It is the highest among all the feed or fodder ingredients. You can see the lucerne is 3.24 of DCP, digestible crude protein, is there in a particular lucerne, whereas the total digestible nutrients in lucerne is 12%. So among that is the 3.24, whereas the bersim is also another leguminous product and it contains about 2.51% of DCP and TDN is 11.9%. So the concentrates like are many. Number one, the concentrates, including the fodder and also the cakes. So many cakes are listed here. Please go through this cake entirely and starting from the coconut cake, cottonseed cake, groundnut cake and mustard oil cake, linseed cake, sesame cake, rapeseed cake. So we have multiple type of the cakes like the coconut cake which is present in the coastal belts where the coconut is harvested very properly, whereas the DCP in this is 19.76, then it is highly digestible. Ground coconut K, it is 78.3%. So it is containing highest type of the total digestible nutrients. Just like the cottonseed cake is the food protein, it's 17.48% food protein, whereas the total digestible percent is 71.6%. The GNC groundnut cake is 41.75%, then it is 71%. So you can compare with that of the coconut cake and groundnut cake. So the groundnut cake is highest protein among all the cakes. It is 47.5. You can highlight this particular thing. The especially the groundnut cake is having highest number of the protein. So always we are talking about the either the cottonseed cake or the groundnut cake, whereas the mustard oil cake which is used in northern part of the India it is 27.61 and total digestible nutrient it is 74.2% and about 24.8% is lost, whereas linseed cake the protein percent or the DCP is 30.57, whereas TDN it is 64.6%. So this also contain somehow good quantity of the protein. Sesame cake it is 38.34, whereas the digestibility of the sesame cake is very high, that is 78.2 among all the digestibility or total digestible nutrition percent is 78%. So this may be a multiple choice question to you and please note down this particular thing. and rapeseed cake it is 28.7.3, then the 78 point different thing especially, and hence please note down that this is having the total digestible nutrient percent, especially in case of sesame cake, whereas the highest quantity of the DCP is present in the groundnut cake, whereas the digestibility of coconut cake is highest when compared to the other cake, especially this sesame cake, etc. This has got highest digestibility. Then the rapeseed cake, whenever it's available, it's always equivalent to that of the cotton seed cake and many more type of the cakes. So then, general principles of computation of the rations for ruminants. So we need to have the balanced ration. Always we are telling it in the balance means the energy and protein balance. That's the most simple things. And later we need to balance the food with the minerals, non-proteinous nitrogens, the salt, and also these vitamins, etc. So these thumb rules are there in feeding in cattle and buffalo both. Then the another thing is the general principles of computation. Suppose a farmer comes and tells that I have got these ingredients and how to go ahead with the feed, then one should have the knowledge of preparation of a ration. For example, the ration is prepared in such a way that it should be given animal during entire 24 hours. So the feed may be given at a time proportions at the different intervals. Usually it is morning and evening, especially in case of the cattle. Just we eat the food. Of course, we are eating three times, whereas the cattle do eat two times. The breakfast and the midday meal and the dinner we have, whereas the cattle will do not have all these things. Then the required nutrients must be contained in the amount of the dry matter the animal is able to consume about 24 hours period. So we need to balance. Then, as usual, the laxative fairly available, maintain regularity in the feeding. Ration should be properly prepared and render it more and more digestible. Then, lastly and importantly, it is economically viable, and it should contain proper the minerals and also the other principles which need to be present in a compound feed. But there is a general formula that the computation ration for the cattle and buffaloes. So it involves the translating the recommendation contained in feeding standards to actual formulations of the feed mixtures and feed practices. So it computing the rations of ruminant based on the dry matter percent, crude protein, total digestible nutrients in a specific feed. So whenever we administer a feed to an animal, all the matter will not be digested to the extent of 100%. So we also need to know the dry matter requirement of the cattle is always 2 to 2% maximum, whereas the buffaloes it is 2.5 to 3% in total. Then, if you divide the total dry matter, once again it is two-third roughage, one-third the concentrates, and the roughage is always divided two-third by the roughage, the dry roughage, whereas one-third should be green roughage always. Whenever it is compulsory that this will properly balance that particular ratio. So if there is a green fodder shortage, especially the legume, then if we are feeding the animal with legume, the proportion of the green grass or the fodder may be reduced to one fourth of the dry matter intake every day, and remaining three-fourth dry matter as the dry roughage. Then the steps in formulation of a feed are different. Then we need to estimate the total requirement in terms of dry matter, crude protein, TDA as per based on different research formulas. Then partition of the dry matter required between roughage and concentrates. So we need to calculate the DM, CP, TDN supplied through green fodder also. A small quantity or the considerable qualities also is from the green forage, whereas also from the dry fodder. So now we need to subtract the amount of the nutrients supplied through green and dry fodder from the total requirements of the animal for the maintenance and also the production. Then we need to take the individual ingredients, and always most of the ingredients do contain the energy as well as the protein percent. Hence, we need to balance this thing. Then we'll see. Finally, we need to calculate the amount of the concentrate mixtures to be offered to the animal to meet the balanced nutrients of it is in terms of its crude protein or the TDN. Then methods of employed formulating a ration person square feet Pearson's, as we have already known that this cannot handle inequalities of grain, and it is restricted to only two ingredients. So one is maize or another thing is the groundnut cake. So at only balance, but the method can balance only one nutrient at a time. For example, maize or the groundnut cake. Or if we add multiple ingredients, then this formula may not work properly. So the formula is manipulated in such a way that the complete nutrient requirement is fulfilled in that particular 1 kg of the feed. And it is laborious and time taking because it's a trial and error method. And the Pearson method always can balance only one nutrient, whereas linear programming it is not sufficient to solve the complicated demands of precision animal nutrition. So another thing that need to be taken care. Then linear and stochastic the programming method. So this method came into being the effective incorporation of nutrient viability into the formulation process so that the requirement of the animal is totally met with a measured energy level. So this is linear or stochastic, stochastic, and you can pronounce it in the way whatever you may be intended to pronounce it for. Whereas another thing is the computer-based rations. So it is the least cost rations. So we can feed the computer with simple Excel sheet. A ration then can be easily balanced, especially combination of different ingredients with lower possible cost. And the resulting mixture is called as least cost ration. Then linear programming, a technique employed to calculate the cost and profit maximizing in the ration. It is called as the linear programming method. Whereas feeding the cattle and buffaloes by thumb rule method is the third method. So common farmers find difficult to follow the technically tough ration formulations based on body weight also. So they do not know, of course, how to take the weight of a hefty cow and also how to take it by indirect means. then the following thumb rules may be guided or given to them. Then this is based on practical experiences rather than scientific experience. So usually practical experience or individual observation do not have much more value in science, but it requires the multiple tasks and also the proved factor of the different feed in terms of the energy and protein requirement. Whereas the feed stuff, if it is a straw of any origin, then how much has to be put to the zebu cattle or the for a cattle, zebu cattle, it is 4 kg. Then crossbred, it requirement is more as the milk yield is also more. Suppose if you are not properly giving the nutrition to the animal, the effect will be very immediate. For example, it may become a downer's cow very commonly. Then whereas the other things like the energy requirements, etc., will be met by the maize percent, whereas the extra allowances during the pregnancy. So one need to give several thoughts before this thing. So the extra energy for calf worm and also for the proteins it should be there. So the concentrate mixture should be in such a way that crude protein should always contain about for to 20%. Then total digestible nutrients means anything whatever we have used in case of the cattle feed, they should be weighed properly. Then it has to be put. Then usually, the extra 1 kg concentrate is very much required over 2.5 kg of the milk over and above the maintenance of requirement of the zebu cattle and 2 kg of the milk in case of the buffaloes. So buffaloes always say very peculiar animals, then they have the smell of that particular feed ingredient or the feed, then they will refuse. Whereas crude protein, it is 20%, TDN or total digestible nutrients, it is 65%. Calcium 0.5 to zero point 0.7 milligram, then phosphorus is the zero point 0.3 to zero point 0.4 milligram. It should be like this. For example, extra 1 kg concentrated is always required every 2.5 kg of the milk over pattern and above the maintenance requirement in case of the zebu cattle, that is 2 kg per milk or the body maintenance, whereas all other things are kept constant. Then the Pearson method already we have discussed how it is a square, just like the crude protein is from only one source here. So usually all the many methods are simple and easy to follow. If statistics is there, especially uh, in a factory, much quantity of the outside institutes may go. Hence, one need to be legitimate, especially concerning the concentrate or a phase. So limitation is that the level of the nutrient is should be intermediate between the nutrient concentration of two feed ingredients, and it's a greatest value when only two ingredients are mixed. So, but it is very difficult because the feed also need to be little bulky, and the nutrient requirement is noted in the middle of the square, in which here in this thing or the protein requirement is 22% in a compounded feed, as few of the other nutritionists say. So this is the explanation how the nutrient value need to be calculated. Then that's about the today's class, and have a good day and goodbye to all.